Module 3 Terminology of screw thread. Flank, flank angle, pitch, crust, root, major diameter, pitch diameter, minor diameter, root truncation, fundamental triangle, angular depth, pitch line, depth of thread, addendum, dedendum, crust truncation. Screw thread. A screw thread is the helical ridge produced by forming a continuous helical groove of uniform section on the external or internal surface of a cylinder or cone. A screw thread formed on a cylinder is known as straight or parallel screw thread, while the one formed on a cone or frustum of a cone is known as tapered screw thread. External thread. A thread formed on the outside of a workpiece is called external thread. Example, on bolts or studs, etc. Internal thread. A thread formed on the inside of a workpiece is called internal thread. Example, on a nut or screw gauge. Multiple stud screw thread. This is produced by forming two or more helical grooves equally spaced and similarly formed in an axial section on a cylinder. This gives a quick traverse without sacrificing core strength. Axis of a thread. This is imaginary line running longitudinally through the center of the screw. Hand, right hand or left hand threads. Suppose a screw is held such that the observer is looking along the axis. If a point moves along the thread in clockwise direction and thus moves away from the observer, the thread is right hand, and if it moves towards the observer, the thread is left hand. Form of thread. This is the shape of the contour of one complete thread as seen in axial section. Crest of thread. This is defined as the prominent part of thread, whether it is external or internal. Root of thread. This is defined as the bottom of the groove between the two flanks of the thread, whether it may be external or internal. Flanks of thread. These are straight edges which connect the crest with the root. Angle of thread. Included angle. This is the angle between the flanks or slope of the thread measured in an axial plane. Flank angle. The flank angles are the angles between individual flanks and the perpendicular to the axis of the thread which passes through the vertex of the fundamental triangle. The flank angle of a symmetrical thread is commonly termed as the half angle of thread. Pitch. The pitch of a thread is the distance measured parallel to the axis of the thread between corresponding points on adjacent thread forms in the same axial plane and on the same side of axis. The basic pitch is equal to the lead divided by the number of thread studs. On drawings of thread sections, the pitch is shown as the distance from the center of one thread crest to the center of the next, and this representation is correct for single stud as well as multi-stud threads. Lead. Lead is the axial distance moved by the threaded part when it is given one complete revolution about its axis with respect to a fixed mating thread. It is necessary to distinguish between measurements of lead from measurement of pitch, as uniformity of pitch measurement does not assure uniformity of lead. Variations in either lead or pitch cause the functional or virtual diameter of thread to differ from the pitch diameter. Thread per pitch. This is the reciprocal of the pitch in inches. Lead angle. On a straight thread, lead angle is the angle made by the helix of the thread at the pitch line with plane perpendicular to the axis. The angle is measured in an axial plane. Helix angle. On straight thread, the helix angle is the angle made by the helix of the thread at the pitch line with the axis. The angle is measured in an axial plane. Depth of thread. This is the distance from the crest or tip of the thread to the roof of the thread measured perpendicular to the longitudinal axis, or this could be defined as the distance measured radially between the major and minor cylinders. Axial thickness. This is the distance between the opposite faces of the same thread measured on the pitch cylinder in a direction parallel to the axis of thread. Fundamental triangle. This is found by extending the flanks and joining the points B and C. Thus in figure, triangle ABC is referred to as fundamental triangle. Here BC is equal to pitch and the vertical height of the triangle is called the angular or theoretical depth. The point A is the apex of the triangle ABC. Truncation. A thread is sometimes truncated at the crest or at the root or at both crest and root. The truncation at the crest is the radial distance from the crest to the nearest apex of the fundamental triangle. Similarly, the truncation at the root is the radial distance from the root to the nearest apex. Addendum. For an external thread, this is defined as the radial distance between the major and pitch cylinders. For an internal thread, this is the radial distance between the minor and pitch cylinders. Dedendum. This is the radial distance between the pitch and minor cylinder for external thread, and for internal thread, this is the radial distance between the major and pitch cylinders. Major diameter. In case of a straight thread, this is the diameter of the major cylinder, imaginary cylinder, coaxial with the screw, which just touches the crest of an external thread or the root of an internal thread. It is often referred to as the outside diameter, crest diameter, or full diameter of external threads. Minor diameter. In case of straight thread, this is the diameter of the minor cylinder, imaginary cylinder, coaxial with the screw, which just touches the roots of an external thread or the crest of an internal thread. It is often referred to as the root diameter or cone diameter of external threads. Effective diameter or pitch diameter. In case of straight thread, this is the diameter of the pitch cylinder, the imaginary cylinder which is coaxial with the axis of the screw and intersects the flank of the threads in such a way as to make the width of threads and width of the spaces between the threads equal. If the pitch cylinder be imagined as generated by a straight line parallel to the axis of screw, that straight line is then referred to as the pitch line. Along the pitch line, the widths of the threads and the widths of the spaces are equal on a perfect thread. This is the most important dimension as it decides the quality of the fit between the screw and the nut. Functional or virtual diameter. For an external or internal thread, this is the pitch diameter of the enveloping thread of perfect pitch, lead and flank angles having full depth of engagement but clear at crests and roots. This is defined over a specified length of thread. This may be greater than the simple effective diameter by an amount due to errors in pitch and angle of thread. The virtual diameter being the modified effective diameter by pitch and angle errors is the most important single dimension of a screw thread gauge. In case of taper screw thread, the cone angle of taper for measurement of effective diameter and whether pitch is measured along the axis or along the pitch cone generator also need to be specified.